I always believed in trust. It was the foundation of my marriage, the one thing I thought was unshakable. My wife, Laura, and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We built a life together, shared dreams, and weathered storms that would have broken many couples. I never thought I'd be the kind of man telling a story like this, never thought my marriage would be torn apart by a single night of betrayal. But that's exactly what happened. And the way it unfolded? I could never have predicted it. It started innocently enough. Laura had recently become more social, reconnecting with old friends from college, spending more time on her appearance, and suddenly taking an interest in nightlife again. I didn't think much of it at first. People change, and she had been feeling stressed from work. I encouraged her to go out, have fun, unwind. I never wanted to be the controlling husband who questioned her every move. But something about that night felt different. She had been texting all day, her phone constantly buzzing with notifications. Normally, she'd chat with me about her plans, but that night, she was secretive. When I asked who she was going with, she waved it off. Just some of the girls, nothing crazy. Then she stepped out of the bedroom in a dress I had never seen before. It was tight, low-cut, something she would have worn back when we were dating, not something she ever wore now. It wasn't just sexy. It was designed to turn heads. She looked stunning, but for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't the one she was dressing up for. I felt something stir in my chest, an uneasy, unfamiliar feeling. Was I being paranoid? Insecure? I shook it off. "You look amazing," I said, forcing a smile. She smiled back, but there was something distant in her eyes. "Thanks, babe. Don't wait up, okay?" And just like that, she was gone. I sat on the couch, trying to distract myself with the game on TV, but my mind kept wandering. Something felt off. Maybe it was the way she had avoided my gaze when she left, or the way her phone had been buzzing all evening. I tried to push it away, telling myself I was just overthinking. But then her phone rang. She had left it on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen and saw a name I didn't recognize, Ethan. The uneasy feeling in my chest turned into a knot. My hands were shaking as I reached for her phone, my heart pounding. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but something inside me screamed that I needed to know. I unlocked the phone. She had never hidden her password before. What I saw next made my blood run cold. A string of messages. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You looked so good in that dress last time. Don't worry, your husband won't find out." My stomach twisted as I scrolled further. It wasn't just innocent flirting. She had been seeing this man behind my back. I clenched the phone so tightly, I thought I might crush it. My mind raced with possibilities. Should I call her? Confront her? Should I go to the club and catch her in the act? No. I needed to be smart. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I grabbed my jacket and my car keys, my pulse racing as I headed for the door. If Laura thought she could play me for a fool, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I drove to the club, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a vice. My heart was hammering in my chest, a storm of emotions raging inside me. Anger, hurt, disbelief. I had always trusted Laura completely, never once doubted her loyalty. And yet, here I was, about to catch my own wife in the middle of her deception. When I arrived, the parking lot was packed. The neon lights flickered above the entrance, music thumping from inside. I sat in my car for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I needed to be careful. I didn't want to make a scene, not yet. I stepped out, pulling my hoodie up to avoid being seen. As I approached the entrance, my eyes scanned the crowd. And then I saw her. Laura was standing near the bar, laughing, her hand resting on a man's arm. Ethan. I recognized him from the photos and their messages, tall, well-dressed, a little younger than me. He leaned in close, whispering something in her ear, and she giggled, tilting her head, her body language screaming intimacy. My breath caught in my throat. She had never looked at me like that in years. I felt my hands ball into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to see what she would do next. I watched from the shadows as she moved closer to him. He placed a hand on her lower back, pulling her into a slow dance. The way she melted into his touch, the way her fingers traced his jawline, it was like watching a stranger, not the woman I had loved for a decade. And then she kissed him. It wasn't just a peck. It was passionate, deep, like she had forgotten she was married. My vision blurred. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My chest tightened, my pulse roared in my ears. I turned around and walked out of the club. I couldn't watch anymore. I had seen enough. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. I wanted to scream, to rage, to destroy something. But more than that, I wanted her to feel what I was feeling. And that's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wouldn't confront her yet.
No.
I was going to let her come home, let her think she got away with it, let her crawl into bed next to me, thinking she was safe. And then I would ruin her world. I sat in the dark, waiting. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, the sound filling the silent house. My mind was a battlefield, anger, pain, and a cold, calculating calm, all fighting for control. I had seen my wife, the woman I vowed to love forever, in another man's arms, her lips on his, her body pressed against him like I no longer existed. But I wasn't going to explode. No, that's what she would expect. Instead, I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of the humiliation and betrayal I felt. The front door finally creaked open around 2 a.m. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor sent a fresh wave of fury through me, but I stayed still, controlling my breathing. She thought I was asleep. She thought she had gotten away with it. She tiptoed into the bedroom, barely sparing a glance at me as she slipped off her dress. I noticed how she hesitated for a moment, probably checking if I was awake, before sliding into bed beside me. The scent of alcohol, cheap perfume, and him clung to her skin. I turned my back to her, pretending to shift in my sleep. She sighed softly, probably relieved.
Good.
Let her feel safe. Let her think she's won. The next morning, I got up before she did. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and scrolled through my phone, looking at the evidence I had collected. The messages, the pictures, the kiss I had watched unfold with my own eyes. I wanted to delete it all, to erase every trace of this nightmare, but I knew better. She walked into the kitchen an hour later, stretching, yawning, acting like nothing had happened. Like she wasn't a lying, cheating woman who had just spent the night betraying her husband. "Morning, babe," she said casually, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You sleep okay?" I stared at her, my grip tightening on my phone. "Yeah," I said flatly. I had a lot on my mind. She didn't notice the edge in my voice. She was too comfortable, too confident that she had covered her tracks. "Yeah," she asked, sitting across from me. "Something bothering you?" I let out a small laugh. "Oh, you have no idea." I stared at her for a long moment, then slid my phone across the table. "Why don't you tell me what's bothering me, Laura?"
She frowned, confused.
Then she looked down at the screen. And everything changed. The blood drained from her face. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone, scrolling through the pictures, the texts, the video of her kissing Ethan. For a long moment, she was silent. Then, in a small, broken voice, she whispered, How did you? "I followed you," I said simply. "I saw everything." She looked up at me, panic in her eyes. "Jake, Don't." I cut her off sharply. "Don't insult me with lies. Don't try to spin this. I watched you, Laura. I saw you with him. I saw you kiss him. I saw you touch him the way you used to touch me." She swallowed hard, her breathing uneven. It didn't mean anything. I laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, it didn't mean anything? That's rich. You're married, Laura. You're my wife. And you think I'm stupid enough to believe it didn't mean anything?" Tears welled in her eyes. She was breaking.
"Good."
"Jake, please," she whispered. "Let's talk about this. I made a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. But we can fix this. I love you. You love me?" I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "You love me, but you spent last night wrapped around another man? You love me, but you kissed him like I never existed." She reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away. Jake, I swear it was a stupid decision. I got caught up in the moment. It'll never happen again. I shook my head. You're right about one thing. It'll never happen again. She blinked. Debbie, what do you mean? I stood up, walking over to the counter, and grabbed a manila envelope. I tossed it in front of her. She stared at it. Slowly, she opened it. And when she saw the divorce papers, she gasped. Jake, no, please. It's done, Laura. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. No, we can fix this. I swear, I'll do anything. You should have thought about that before you let him put his hands on you, I said coldly. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. I watched her for a moment, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt nothing. No love. No sadness. No anger. Just freedom. You should start packing, I said. You're moving out. She looked up at me, her face desperate. Jake, please. I'm done, Laura. She realized, in that moment, that there was nothing left to say. She had gambled everything, thinking she could have me and her secret thrills, thinking she could betray me and get away with it. But she was wrong. And now, she was left with nothing. The aftermath. The divorce was fast and brutal. Thanks to the evidence I had, she walked away with almost nothing. The house? Mine. The assets? Mine. She tried to fight it, tried to negotiate, but the prenup we had signed years ago sealed her fate. She moved in with a friend, and as far as I know, things didn't go well for her.
Ethan?
He ghosted her the moment things got messy. Turns out he wasn't looking for commitment, he was just looking for a good time. And once he got it, he moved on to his next target. The last time I heard from Laura was a few months after the divorce. She sent me a long message, apologizing, begging for another chance, telling me how much she missed me. I didn't reply, because the truth was I didn't miss her. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Because sometimes walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the best revenge of all.